we hear a lot people saying, um, you're so lucky that you only have one toddler running around and the other one just sits. And that, I think that's one of the hard to navigate situations. We hear it from a lot of people because, um, they're thinking, oh, she doesn't have to chase after two toddlers. She only has to chase after one. That must be so nice. So I think trying to find a way to respond to that has been pretty tough. When you look at him, he just looks like maybe a 9-month-old boy who's just happy sitting there playing. But on the flip side of that, he faces challenges every day, and we
Right.
face challenges as a family every day. And I feel like saying you're so lucky kind of takes away from all of the things that he perseveres through
Right.
and all the challenges that we have to mitigate.
The point of this quote is not to induce guilt. People say things with good intentions, but this is valuable insight to the life of someone living out a parent's reality. My name is Seth Carnell. With me is Josh Veach, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. Josh, thanks for joining me, man. This was a fantastic conversation with Kelly, and I just want to say I really do appreciate. I appreciate whatever family we highlight in general, but the fact that both Kelly and Mark have military background. Mark is currently in the Navy, which is why he wasn't able to join us. And am I right? Kelly was also in the Navy.
Yeah, we touched base on that in the conversation a little bit. She was. She's a military police, was involved in the military police. And then with Avery's condition, they had to kind of make some decisions on how to best care for him. And so, yeah, we touch on that, but absolutely. Obviously we are incredibly blessed by the country that we live in. And we recognize that, the rights and privileges that we have in this country they're not free. And we have, incredibly brave women and men that serve in different capacities. And so we definitely want to take a moment and say thank you and encourage you as you're listening. If for those people that are active duty or veterans in your life, to make sure to express that gratitude to them as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to touch on based on your conversation with Kelly is, and it's something we've heard quite frequently, and not every family we feature gets to experience this, but what have you learned about the relief and almost happiness about finally receiving a diagnosis?
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's unique with every story, and it means something a little bit differently to every family. In fact, we just had a family recently where the diagnosis was really not even something that was really that important to them. They did talk about some of what they gained by, gaining some community, like in a Facebook group or something like that. But for some, a diagnosis doesn't mean much, but for others, a diagnosis means quite a bit, because it gives some parameters and a little bit of clarity and a little bit, maybe, in the best case scenario, it's a little bit deeper understanding of what might be going on and how to best love and serve their children and care for them. And so I think a lot of that, it just varies so much from person to person and family to family. And I think that's great. I love that people, what it tells us is that there are all types of different people that have to navigate this journey, journeys like this, journeys of having a child on a rare medical journey. And no two stories are exactly the same. It's okay to make your own path, and for one family it to mean a lot, and for others it to not mean so much. And so, it was definitely, this is a different perspective than what we recently heard.
Well, and for some families, like, you have kind of your answers and your kind of lifestyle day-to-day before getting a diagnosis, no matter what the diagnosis is. And some of them, you wait for the diagnosis in order to get those answers. So, there is a different balance there as well. And you can just hear the kind of relief in Kelly's voice when she tells that part of the story.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing to hear. One other piece about the medical side of it that I found fascinating, and this is unfortunately something we don't always hear about, but that the geneticist that they were talking to, and I'll let Kelly tell most of this, but was more personable than others that we've heard about in the past. This geneticist said, now keep in mind, this doesn't define him, which in your experiencing talking to these people doesn't always happen, does it?
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, a lot of times, a lot of the stories that we hear when it comes to the involvement of the medical field is that things are pretty cut and dry, and they almost always they start the conversation with a deficit, meaning here are the things that you anticipated your child to be able to do, but they're no longer going to be able to do. Mm-hmm. And I think for most doctors, they're doing that probably on purpose in a way they're trying to be honest and set realistic expectations. But what I think is commonly missed is the human element of that moment that isn't saying, here are all the ways that you can absolutely still celebrate your child being amazing and all the things that they will still be able to do. And you should continue to move forward as if they're going to be able to do all those things and, not grieve what you don't know yet, what you haven't, what you're not there yet, And so, yeah, it was really refreshing to hear that their D-Day, their diagnosis day, and kind of what the takeaway was there was a human element to the delivery of that news, which is really powerful. We hear that a lot when it comes to nurses or people more on the care side of things, but oftentimes when we hear about an interaction with the physicians, it tends to be more of here's what's going on in the body and not so much what's going on in the relationship of the room and the human element of what's going on in the room. And
sometimes it could probably be really important to even hear that from the top, expert, so to speak, that you're experiencing that, this is a reality, but is not who he is. I don't know who that geneticist was, but I applaud his approach or her approach.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I think is touched on in the conversation as well is that Avery's situation, which is true of a lot of different conditions or diagnosis, is that it's oftentimes at a spectrum. And so it's not a cut and dry, here's what's going to happen or not going to happen. Here's kind of this range of possibilities. And you can be, I think it can be said that you can be aware of these things, but like you said, recognizing that while those things may or may not happen, you may or may not be able to walk or speak, doesn't mean they're not going to be able to communicate. Doesn't mean they're not going to have some level of freedom, right?
Correct.
Like they may have a wheelchair that gives them the freedom to move and do the things that they want to do. And so to be able to speak hope and still believe in all the things that this child is capable of and not just feel like the future's been completely robbed from one appointment.
When you listen to Kelly, so whenever we have one of these interviews, either if I'm in the conversation or I'm just kind of a listening participant, one of the things that I always try to do is find something that I can relate to, which is I hope something that most of our listeners do. And she spoke into something that I really kind of connected with, and that is, in order to get away from the noise, the reactions, the stress, and the drama of what's going on in your life, and that it's important to get away as a family and have experiences together. Now, Avery is not their only kid. He has a sister, and they spoke highly about how they get away, just them, and have experiences together as a family. How important is that?
I think you can hear it in her voice and how she talked about her family and how much that time means. That is the normalcy. That is the thing that kind of grounds them. That's their place where they don't have to worry about the external things. That's their place and time together that brings them closer and kind of rejuvenates them as a family, it sounds like. And I think it's important. That's going to look different for every person and every family. And I think that's a takeaway from anyone who's listening, whether you are in a situation like Mark and Kelly, where you have a child on a rare medical journey, or you're, a single college student or whatever. you have to find the spaces and the opportunities in your life to take a breath and to make sure that you're not living out of, living too far into the margins of your life, to the point of unhealth as much as you can control it. And, to me, when she talked about, what they like to do as a family, and even, ahead of our call and of the things that is important to them, and the hiking and the spending time outside, they have not let the diagnosis or some of the difficulties or complexities that come with the journey that Avery's on. They have not let that hold them back from doing what they still want to do, and get out and be a family in nature, and do all the things that they loved before. And I think that's really important. And she talked about the healthiness of her and Mark and their relationship, and how that's come together through Avery's journey. And I think, staying true to doing the things that they've always liked to do and not letting go of those things I would assume is something that has kind of helped, continue to bond their relationship instead of, separate it when it could easily happen in times of stress.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, I don't want to postpone this any longer because it really is a fantastic conversation. Kelly is very authentic and open, and just pretty easy to listen to, and I imagine easy to talk to. But two things before we go, and I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but the first thing is, if you are getting something out of this podcast and you think somebody else might be also, please share it. Even if you don't know anybody who's on a rare medical journey, there's a message in there for everybody. And if anything, it teaches you or helps you at least see other people and how they're going through things, and maybe putting yourself in their shoes for a little bit. And second is, how can we support this family?
So you can go to our website, www.goshout.love, and purchase anything from the shop. Anything during May is going to go to support this family. And specifically the need that we're helping raise funds for. Right now, Avery has to have a CPAP machine, which is just to help him sleep. And right now they're having to rent that, and insurance is not helping much in that front. So obviously it gets expensive quickly. And so all the funds that we raise during the month are going to go to that need and to help him. We're really just helping this little guy get a good night's sleep. And so the t-shirt design, I think if you're listening, you're really going to love it. If you know Mark and Kelly at all, and you know their story as much as they have talked about enjoying being outside and hiking and all that stuff, you're going to love it. And it also really resonates with who Avery is, someone who is happy and resilient and adaptable. And the design says adventure awaits, and it's a kind of a boot imprint, and I really love it. It's one of my favorite designs that we've had recently. And so please go ahead and take a look at that. If that one's not up your alley, there are plenty of designs to choose from. There's other items that you can buy. And of course, everything is going to help benefit this family. There are also a couple donation options that you can do if you'd just like to contribute to the family and or the cause of Go Shout Love. So check that out all on our website at goshout.love.
As always, thank you guys for listening. Josh and I love these conversations and love sharing them to you. And we are just going to jump right in. So here is Kelly.
Kelly, welcome to the Go Shout Love podcast. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
We are excited to be shouting love for Avery all month long. May's a great month. We're already excited about what's going on. And so we want to just take a little bit on this conversation and introduce Avery to the world, to the Go Shout Love family, and then just learn a little bit more about your family story. So before we get into the complexities of your story and kind of your family dynamic, just introduce us to Avery.
So Avery is an 18-month-old toddler, and he's the happiest little boy that, you could meet. He just loves life, and he just loves, being held and watching his sister run around and play. And he's just very happy to, be along for the ride, it seems.
Yep. So 18 months.
Yep.
And you mentioned that he has a sister. And how old is sister?
Sister is a twin, so she's also 18 months.
18 months. And who is the oldest of the twins?
She is by like 30 seconds.
30 seconds. So it will be a significant thing that she will hold over his head as they get older, I'm sure.
I'm sure she will, yes.
How else would you describe Avery's personality?
Well, he's very happy, but he's also very stubborn. If he doesn't want to do something, he will make it known that he doesn't want to do something. Like for therapy, if he does not want to try and stand, he's like, I'm not doing it. He knows what he wants.
So he may have some complexities that other kids don't have to deal with, but he's fully embracing the 18-month of learning independence, and I will fight when I want to fight.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Which is good. We're happy about that.
Absolutely.
We're glad that he's developing things that he doesn't like and likes.
Yeah. And you said, I don't know if you mentioned Avery's sister's name. What is her name?
Emma.
Emma. Okay.
Emma and Avery. Yep.
Emma and Avery. Great names. How would you describe the relationship between the two?
Emma is very outgoing. So she's like all over the place. So she's always trying to hug him and like play with him and entertain him. She actually just started doing peekaboo with him. And, it's really awesome to watch that happen because he loves peekaboo. But she'll like run up to him and hug him, and he can't really keep his balance, so she kind of knocks him over sometimes. So it's like I don't want to say love-hate, but she's a lot of love and he's a lot of I don't want this right now.
So it's they're siblings, just like
exactly.
any other set of twins. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome. And I'm sure it's cool to see them grow into those roles as brother and sister.
It really is. Yeah.
Very cool. And then of course there's like most of us, they're not the only babies of the house. There's another baby, right?
There's two other babies.
Okay.
We have two dogs. We have Leia, who is our first fur baby. We rescued her back in Hawaii. And she's a little ornery, but then we actually got a puppy, a golden retriever puppy named Moose, who we are hoping would be Avery's therapy dog in the future. But for right now, he's just our puppy who's like another toddler running around destroying everything.
And you said Moose is the name?
Yeah.
Okay. Very fitting of a golden retriever. They will grow to a good size.
Right. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. And how do Avery and Emma respond to the dogs?
They love the dogs. Emma's always trying to, hug them too.
Yeah.
But Avery loves watching them play. That was actually the first time we ever heard Avery laugh, was when Leia was playing with Mark, my husband. He started like deep belly laughing, and we had never heard him really make much noise. So we were like, oh my gosh, this is like life altering. So he loves watching the dogs play.
That's awesome. It's so funny how kids have different takes on animals. Like I have two kiddos, and one is completely not interested at all, and the other one's just like all up in the face. Like right. It's so funny. You mentioned that Moose will potentially be a service dog for Avery. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about kind of how that came about and what your kind of hopes and goals, if that works out, what that looks like.
Well, we know that Avery, he has a few diagnoses, and one of them is autism. And so we want like Avery to be able to ground himself with something that maybe isn't a human. And we were hoping that that'll be Moose in the future. And just, really help him get through like the tough parts of his days that maybe mom and dad can't help him get through. So that's our goal for Moose. But if that doesn't work out, we're perfectly fine just having a regular old puppy or golden retriever.
Yeah. Did you do research on what type of dog specific to like the goal of having him as a service animal, or? Yeah,
we really just wanted a dog that's a companion. We want Avery to have a lifelong companion, and golden retriever, well, not lifelong, but
sure,
long-term companion. And golden retrievers, they're like the best companion dogs that you can have. Yeah. So.
Super loyal.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Very cool. So we'll get into some of the diagnosis and some of those things, but I want to go back to something that for most of our listeners, myself included, the ears perk up when you said something about Hawaii, especially as we're recording this in April. I'm in Missouri and it's currently snowing. And so Hawaii, anything about Hawaii sounds great right now. So tell us about you, because you guys live in South Carolina now, right?
Mm-hmm, we do.
So tell us about kind of your journey and Hawaii and how that journey brought you to South Carolina with 2 kids?
Oh, it's quite a journey. So we started out in Hawaii. We're both stationed in the Navy at the time, and we found out we were pregnant with twins. And then, after the twins were born, we actually went to visit my mom in Virginia. And then that's when all the problems started arising with Avery. And I actually ended up getting stuck in Virginia in the hospital with Avery. And then I just got out of the Navy from there. And then Mark got moved to South Carolina. And so we moved down here. Mm-hmm. And that's just the, short version of it.
Yeah. Were you, was the plan to transition out of the Navy for you, or is that a transition that happened out of necessity with Avery's diagnosis?
It happened out of necessity with Avery because I was actually military police. So I really worked a lot of shift work, and there's no way to get off the shift work to be able to take him to all these appointments and everything. So me separating from the Navy was definitely the best option.
Yeah. Moms in general make a ton of sacrifices for our families. In May, it's the month of Mother's Day, and obviously, that's something that we celebrate. But what was that transition like for you as someone who's obviously strong and strong-willed to kind of, I have a ton of respect for anyone that's in the military, but to go into the Navy and to do military police, that says a lot about who you are and kind of your drive. What was the transition like to be able to go from that path to mom and stepping out of that out of your love for your kids?
At the time I never really saw myself as a stay-at-home mom, but and it was really difficult to make that transition because I felt guilty for my boss and like everyone that I was leaving behind. I felt like I was leaving a gap in the work and they had to pick up my slack. But I would never change the decision I made because I would do anything for Avery or Emma. So it was tough, but it was definitely the right choice, and I would not change anything.
Yeah. And so kiddos are 18 months now. Tell us about when something first kind of presented itself with Avery and what that looked like and kind of what steps you had to take at that time.
Well, actually, they thought that Avery had some issues when he was in utero before he was even born. But once he was born, they're like, oh, he's a preemie. But other than that, he's great. So we were taking him to his first pediatrician appointment. And I was like, he really sleeps a lot. He doesn't wake up to eat. We have to wake him up. He doesn't really latch. Like, we presented all these issues and they're like, well, he's a preemie, still developing, just keep trying to wake him up. And so as time went on, he just really was sleeping through life and wasn't moving, wasn't doing everything that sister was doing and reaching those mini milestones and stuff. And eventually when we were visiting my mom in Virginia, he did not wake up for 12 hours to eat. And we were doing everything. We took him out into the cold to try and get him to wake up, and he was not stirring. He was just snoozing away. So we went to the hospital, and then that's when we were admitted.
Mm. And so you weren't even home. You were traveling.
Right. Mm. And I even, I kind of breezed over it, but at one of their pediatrician appointments back in Hawaii, I was like, can we please get genetic testing? Something is not right. And the doctor was like, some babies are just hard to feed, just he doesn't need genetic testing. He looks fine. So.
And how long, what was the gap between you asking for that and then that appointment when you were visiting in Virginia?
I want to say 2 weeks, probably, maybe a month.
Okay. Yeah.
Not too long. We were in Virginia when they were 2 months old. So they were still pretty young.
Yeah.
But it felt like eternity.
Yeah, I can imagine. Especially, I would assume that having the benefit of having a sister kind of go along through life at the same time, not that every child, even siblings and twins, are going to hit all the milestones at the same time. But as a first-time mom, I'm assuming it was probably helpful in understanding and being a little bit more assertive with doctors to say, hey, something's not right here because I can tell a major difference in the two.
Right. When a baby is not, an infant's only job is to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom. And when a baby's not doing one of those, like there's obviously an issue. So even like I try not to compare them or compare, anything really, but it was great to have Emma like to like really show me like, hey, this is what should be happening, and he's not even close to hitting those markers.
Right.
So.
Even as a sense of just a reassurance of that kind of gut feeling, I would assume.
Right. Oh yeah.
And so when you finally got through on the genetic testing, were you able to kind of move forward with that after? Well, I guess let's go back to once you got admitted. Tell us a little bit about what came after that and like diagnosis and things like that.
Well, the night after he was admitted, the doctors were making their rounds and they had a geneticist with them, and she like took one look at him and she was like, we need to get genetic testing right now. And I was like, thank goodness, thank God this is happening, because this is what I've been asking for. And so she put a rush on the genetic testing, and we found out that he has 3q duplication and 3p deletion, which is really just a missing piece and a duplication of the 3rd chromosome. So we got those answers, and it was relieving at the time to finally have an answer as to why things weren't happening that should be happening. So that was really, really good to have. Yeah.
And when they gave you that news, was that there's a certain element of, at least we know, like right now we have some level of definition of what's going on, but was any sort of duplication or deletion, was that part of your vocabulary already, or did you have to like jump in and learn a ton about genetics and kind of all that stuff?
No, what I thought he maybe had Down syndrome. So I was kind of in the chromosome area, but I knew nothing about it. So we kind of really just threw ourselves into it and did all the research possible. We tend to research every little thing. So we definitely started becoming experts kind of on it, but at the time we didn't even know that you could have a missing piece. So
right. Is there there's a lot that's happened in research in this space. I'm even thinking of SMA. There's tons of genetic research that's being done, and even certain types of therapies. Are any of the therapies and research that's kind of being done right now, are any of them potentially of benefit to Avery in the future?
Unfortunately not right now. It's I guess, they can't really replace something that's missing from my understanding. And also his genetic disorder is so rare that he's the only one in the world that we know of right now that has that missing piece and wow. that duplication. So there's such little research on it that they can't even find a name for it. They just name it what it is, like a duplication and a deletion. So not at the moment.
Okay. And kind of taking that diagnosis and putting it into layman's terms for someone who's listening, how does that kind of impact Avery's day-to-day life of what might be a little bit different or a little bit more of a struggle in different ways as an 18-month-old?
A good way to explain it is that it basically affects anything that you can think of, like his breathing, all of his organs are affected, his muscle tone, his cognitive abilities, his speech, and all that. So basically everything is affected. And, they handed us a packet when he was diagnosed, and it said he can walk, but he may walk or he may not walk. He may talk, he may not talk. Like they kind of explained it like it's a spectrum, because everyone who has something kind of like what he has, it's all over the place. So it's really just like a guessing game.
How did you and Mark, as first-time parents, how'd you process that news?
I think at the time we were like just so thankful to have something to go off of, and we weren't constantly wondering. We were so happy, and we're still happy that we have a diagnosis, but I think we really are trying to come to the terms with, we don't know what the future holds, and we're okay with that. So like at the time we were relieved, and we're still relieved, but we still need to grasp the mystery,
Yeah. And how old was Avery when you got the diagnosis?
3 months.
3 months. Okay.
Three
So you
months. So
guys have, I
we're,
mean, you got it fairly early and you're into the journey a little bit.
yes.
And you referenced, autism as well. When did that enter the picture?
January of this year, we
Okay.
took him to his first developmental peds appointment, and she was like, he definitely has autism. So that's just another diagnosis that we're going to research a lot.
Yeah. And become experts on.
Yeah.
But what's cool, what I love about your story, that I know of it so far, and is that you guys are very active. Like you are, outdoorsy. You kind of get after it. And what I love about not only that you have twins and you do this, but you especially have, Avery that has extra, considerations that have to be put into place, but you haven't let that slow you down. Tell us a little bit about what you guys like to do as a family and how you adapt that when needed to make sure that Avery's included in that.
Well, our big thing is hiking and, you know, summiting mountains and things like that, and just getting outside and being with nature as much as possible. Um, and, when we found out we were having twins, we were like, we're not going to let this slow us down. We're going to instill the same nature loving into them. And I think even with Avery, we didn't even make a second thought about it. We were like, we're still going to continue hiking. We're still going to continue getting outside no matter what. And like little things, like we recently just bought a wagon that has a 5-point harness that he can sit in and Emma can walk next to that he loves. She actually pushes him around in it. And it's so cute to watch. But and like for hiking, we made sure to buy hiking packs that he can sit in even when he's, a little bit heavier. So we make sure to just try and include him in everything we do and make sure he's comfortable doing it.
Yeah. You referenced, a little bit earlier about not making comparisons. Tell us a little bit, and I know that's something that's kind of important, especially when it comes to embracing, Avery in all that he is and not being defined by a diagnosis. Tell us what that means to you to kind of, not let comparison in or let any temptation to compare like rob you of anything and joy in your family's life.
Right. It's very hard with social media these days to, not compare and not see what everyone else is doing that maybe you can't do. And I think that if you're constantly looking at what everyone else has that you don't have, then you can never really enjoy what you have. And so that's something we try and follow every day. We just try and be happy with the little things and be happy with what we have. And we try not to compare Emma to other toddlers or compare Avery to Emma, because every kid's really going their own path. And so we want Emma and Avery to know that even though everyone's different, everyone's loved the same.
Yeah. Is that, have you come into any encounters where, you've met people or had, any situations where they've asked about Avery, or you've gotten any like second glances or anything like that?
There's been a few. He used to wear a helmet to fix his plagiocephaly and his flat head. So at the grocery store once, someone was like, she like whispered real close. She was like, "Is he okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's a tough question to ask, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's doing good.
Are you okay? Like,
Right.
yeah.
It was, she meant well. I
Yeah.
think she thought that maybe he injured his head or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that we took a step back and we're like, what just happened? Another situation, someone was trying to wave at Avery and he doesn't wave. He kind of just like, smiles. And they were like, "Oh, I guess he's not waving." And I was like, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
People don't mean wrong. You just got to kind of figure out a way to handle those situations with grace and just be, it's okay that happened.
Yeah. And with some in some situations, a diagnosis may present more, visibly more easily. And for some, it's more of a hidden, there's really
Right.
not a face to it. And so, which I would assume that's probably where Avery fits more so, right? Is that there's
Definitely.
kind of like, it's kind of invisible if you don't know him yet.
Right.
So have there been any other situations that kind of have been tough to navigate similar to that one? Or is it just kind of like you don't really worry about what other people are engaging with?
We hear a lot people saying, you're so lucky that you only have one toddler running around and the other one just sits. And I think that's one of the hard to navigate situations. We hear it from a lot of people because, they're thinking, oh, she doesn't have to chase after two toddlers. She only has to chase after one. That must be so nice. So I think trying to find a way to respond to that has been pretty tough. When you look at him, he just looks like maybe a 9-month-old boy who's just happy sitting there playing. But on the flip side of that, he faces challenges every day, and we face challenges as a family every day. And I feel like saying you're so lucky kind of takes away from all of the things that he perseveres through.
Right.
And all the challenges that we have to mitigate. So I think
it's a very short-sighted perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And, we hear, he's so happy. And I'm like, he really is happy. And we are so lucky he's happy. But he is so strong. And he's, fighting through every day, mitigating all these problems. And it just takes away a lot of what he goes through, I think.
Thank you for listening. This is just part 1 of 2 episodes talking with Kelly about Avery and the rest of the family. Please stay tuned as this conversation will continue, and there's a lot of stuff in there that you won't want to miss. We mentioned earlier, a great way to shout love is to support Avery in the month of May with the purchase of a specifically designed t-shirt, a hoodie, tank top, or other items from our website, goshout.love. Every purchase in May will help cover Avery's medical bills, medication, and some medical equipment as well. Outside of this podcast, you can watch his video and read his story to really get to know this incredible kiddo. You can also subscribe to this podcast to hear more stories every month from some unique and wonderful families. Please keep listening, keep following our activity on Facebook and Instagram, and as best you can, keep joining us as we go shout love. Thank you.